morning.
Morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So my name is Ashley Hinkleman. I know about half of you, I think. I've grown up at Trinity. This is just where I've kind of been born and raised, I guess. And so one thing you might notice about Trinity is that it's very mission-minded. Since I was really little, starting in GA classes, we went to mission trips all the time. Like I remember in 3rd grade making Play-Doh and taking it to a children's hospital. I just grew up in this mission-minded church, and so it's always been kind of a focus of mine in life. And growing up in the youth group here, we did lots of mission trips, obviously, and I remember we went to summer camp one year, and the speaker asked, like, who here feels called to ministry? And I was like, I've never really considered that, but for some reason I feel like I should raise my hand. So I raised my hand, and they said, all right, now pray for the person near to you who's raising their hand. And they're like, what do you want to be prayed for? I was like, I don't know, I just raised my hand. I just feel like God is calling me to go to ministry, and I don't know what that looks like. And so there was like a girl near me who was like, I'm going into children's ministry, and one guy said, I'm going to be a pastor. I'm like, that's great, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm doing. But I just kind of went with that for a couple of years. I didn't know what I was doing in that. I just kind of focused on life. And then I just got really involved in international relations and international studies. I fell in love with Japan. I studied in Japan. I taught in Japan. I've lived overseas for several years. And I didn't really know where that was going, but I felt more and more as I was overseas that maybe God was calling me to be an overseas missionary. And I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I started feeling that overseas missions was where I was supposed to go. So this past year, I had an amazing experience in Asia with the World Race. And I'm going to get to a little bit more about that in a second, but my lesson is Life and Lessons in the World Race. So let's keep on going. So first of all, what is the World Race? It's an 11-month mission trip to 11 different countries through an organization called Adventures in Missions. They're based out of Gainesville, Georgia. They send long-term and short-term trips. The shortest trip is a week, then they go to a month, then they go to a couple months, and then they have the World Race, which is their longest one at 11 months. So you usually go to several different continents, usually like South America, Africa, Asia, usually Western Europe, poor countries like that. But for the first time ever, they had an all-Asia route, and that's the one that I went on. We went to all Asian countries, 11 countries in 11 months, so you practically covered all of Asia. And so the way that it works is that AIM, Adventures in Missions, has contacts all over the world. So you partner with missionaries, nonprofits, organizations, churches that are already on the ground in these countries. All you do is go and you partner with them in what they're already doing. You don't have to worry about a place to live, where you're going to eat, where you're going to sleep, what you're going to do, because those places are already set up. When you get to the country, your contact meets you at the airport, and then you work with them for the month in whatever their ministry is like. We worked with several different ministries and several different contexts, and I'll get to those in a little bit, but you get a wide range of experience on the World Race because you work with so many different people, and you meet so many different people and learn about what their stories are. So let's see. Why the World Race? Why did I choose the World Race? Well, I told you that I was very mission-minded. I kind of grew up in the church that focused on that and encouraged that. I loved overseas. I loved living overseas. I loved meeting international people and working in those contexts. And so I graduated from university at NC State, and I went to teach in Japan, and I just fell in love with Japan. I had kind of been interested in the country for a long time anyways, but when I got there and just met my students and met my community people, and just got really involved there, I just developed this huge heart for the Japanese people because only 2% of the population is Christian. I was literally the only Christian in a school of 500 people. There was no one else in the area that could tell these people about Jesus. And so every day I just realized that like there was so much darkness in their hearts and so much darkness in the area. There's so much depression. There's a lot of suicide in Japan. There's a lot of alcoholism. There's things that, you know, we think of in a first world country, the side effects that come with materialism. But without Jesus, there was no focus for their lives either. And I just really had a heart for the Japanese people in that matter. And so when I finished teaching, I knew that I wanted to go back to Japan as a missionary, but I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know what being a missionary looked like, and I wanted to have some experience of that before I decided to just devote my full time to ministry. And so when I came back to the States, I was kind of looking for things to do, looking for volunteer projects, organizations, something I could get into that would give me experience with that. And I heard about the World Race. A friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing posted on Facebook one day saying, hey, I'm going on this thing called the World Race. I was like, well, that looks interesting. What is that? And I looked it up, but keeping in mind that I wanted to go to Japan. And they went to all these different countries. It sounded like an amazing adventure, an amazing experience. But they didn't go to Japan. I was like, well, that's it. Sorry, God, I'm not going to do that. And I closed the window and didn't think about it again. But somehow or other, the World Race AIM got my email address. I don't know what I filled out, but they sent me an email 2 weeks later saying, new routes posted for September. Please check them out. I was like, all right, well, I'll check again. And for the first time ever, they had an all-Asia route that included Japan. It was like God had pointed neon signs at this door and said, go that way. And so I signed up, and I told my parents later. But I signed up, and I knew that that was what I wanted to do, so that's why I chose the world race. Let's go to the next page. So before we get going, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what the racer lingo is, some words you might hear me say that you might want to know what it means. So the first thing is, what is a racer? A racer is a world race participant. I am a former racer, and that looks like this. This is me on a travel day, so moving between countries. You carry everything you own on your back. So you have a huge backpack weighing mine weighed about 38 pounds. And in that backpack, I had a tent, a sleeping bag, a sleeping pad, a sleeping liner. I had clothes, maybe for about a week. It's like 5 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, 2 skirts, a couple pairs of socks, a couple pairs of underwear, and that's what you live on for the year. Like if you see me wearing the same clothes in these pictures, it's because I am, because I had maybe 5 outfits for the entire year. And that's just the way you go. You go very simple, very easy. And in the front backpack, I have my laptop and my journal and a couple of important things like my electronics that I want to keep with me at all times. I also have a purse because I carry the team's money, and I'll get to that. And then I have a guitar. You might notice that. Before I left in the race, I did not play guitar. I just decided that it was something I wanted to learn, and a friend lent me her guitar for the year with a hard case and everything, and I learned how to play. That was just something that I wanted to do, and I was able to actually use that skill in worship. We led worship in many countries and many churches, and it came in handy in a lot of different places. That was one thing that I kind of let God teach me, and let others teach me, and then I was able to give back to others in return. It was a really big blessing, actually. Let's go to the next one. Another thing is the route. That's the 11 countries planned to visit. That's what we call 11 in 11, 11 countries in 11 months. And so my route was the All-Asia, India, Nepal, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Japan, Philippines, China, Mongolia. I might have said that a million times in the past year. And so those are the countries that we're supposed to go to. And this is what the picture looked like. However, there was a note on the website saying, let's see, note, routes subject to change. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's go on to the next one. So I also had a squad. You don't go by yourself, you go in a large squad of people. Mine was 40. We had 40 people that lived together. We'd go to each country together. And then when we got to the countries, we would split up. But we always came back together at the end of the month. And those are the people that we did life with. They literally became my family. I was 3rd generation H squad. The world race has been doing this enough times that they go through the alphabet, A through Z. And this is the 3rd time they got into H squad. There are thousands of racers out in the field at any given point. So there's lots of people going out in the field. And this was my squad in Nepal. This was our 2nd month. We're all young and fresh. We're still excited about everything. You might notice that there are more women than men. That's because we only had 7 guys in our squad. And that's pretty common on the mission field, actually. There are always more women in their sites than there are men. I don't know why that is. But we could really use some more men on the mission field. So let's keep going. And this is my squad again at the end of our time, at the very last day of the race. So we'll look a little bit nicer. All right. So we also have a team, and your team is a group of 5 to 7 people who you live with every day, 24/7. You do not leave these people, literally. There's a rule that you cannot go up by yourself for safety issues. And so if you want to go to the bathroom, you say, all right, I need someone to go with me. If you want to go to the grocery store, someone has to go with me. You are with someone every single second. There is no getting away from these people. So if you don't like them, you have to get over it because you're going to be living with them all the time. So this is my first team. I had 2 teams in the race. Normally teams switch up every now and then, and the squad leaders, the people who are in charge of the squad, kind of decide who goes together at what times. So this is my first team of 5 women. We spent Christmas together in Laos, is where we are at this point. And my second team, my second team was Team Woven, and we spent 7 months together. We actually were the only team of our squad that stayed together for the longest. Most teams were split up in between, but our squad leaders felt that we were really connecting together and that we were really pushing each other and helping each other grow stronger in Christ and also in relationships with others. So as you can tell, we didn't like each other at all. But these girls have become my family, and they're really important to me even now. Even if I don't get to talk to them all the time, they are still always in my hearts and in my prayers. Let's go next. So you also might hear me say the budget. That's something that we live on with all the money that we've raised. So each racer is required to raise $16,000. That's a lot of money, and when I first heard that number, I was like, there is no way that I can raise all that money. And that's right, I couldn't raise all that money, but God could. And so the church donated to me, a couple different churches donated, a lot of friends and family and people that I didn't even know who heard about my story decided that they believed in what I was doing. They believed that God had called me to this, and so they donated for me to go. So I raised, I raised $16,000, and that translates into $10 per day per person for everything that you need on the race. So it covers your plane tickets, your health insurance, and then it covers food, lodging, and transportation. So we live on $10 a day for food, lodging, and transportation. Who thinks they could do that in America? No? Right, exactly. Some of these countries, it was a little difficult. It was a bit of a stretch. We might have eaten fried rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but we were able to survive on food for $3 a day, transportation for $2 a day, and lodging for $4 a day. I think that comes out. But that's pretty much about what happened for a lot of our trip, was living on very small amounts of money. And it encouraged us to live like the people around us. We lived in very poor communities, and we learned to live the way that they did. So I was also the treasurer, which is the person in charge of finances for their team. That means that I carried all the money for our team to pay for all of that stuff. I gave each of my team members, I gave each of my team members their money for food for the week, and then I'd say, all right, keep this. If you spend all of it, don't come back to me until next week, because that's all your money you get for this week. But it also means that you get to be a millionaire, because in some countries the currency exchange is really drastic. And so when we were in Laos, I pulled out about $100, and I instantly became a millionaire in Laotian kip, the currency there, because the exchange rate was so crazy. So to give you a picture of that, first of all, it felt like playing Monopoly. I had to take care of the budget and the different colored money in Thailand. I was like, what am I doing? Do I get past go and collect $200? And then the next picture. So this is in the Philippines, just fanning out all the money. One of my friends likes to take a picture every month of all the money. To tell you how much that equates to, let's go to the next picture. That's about $1,000 that I'm carrying in my hands right there. This is in Cambodia, where they actually use American currency. So I had to keep track of this money, and it was kind of scary at some points when you're in the streets of these cities where you know that someone could take your bag and just run off with it because you were carrying more money than they've ever seen in their entire life. So it was a big responsibility, and I felt honored to have that responsibility, to be trusted with that, because I know that I'm not very good at math, but I did keep a good track of all that money, and that was just a great chance to grow in that area for me. So ministry on the race, what does it look like? These are some of the things that we did. There's manual labor, teaching English, working with children, prayer, outreach in the red light districts, evangelism outreach, uplifting the church, and just in general being the hands and feet of Jesus. This is a quick overview. I'll go into depth with each of these things now. So manual labor, we worked in an AIDS home in India, and they had a vineyard and a garden area that they grew vegetables and fruits and things in that they could sell to raise money for the AIDS home. So one day we went out there and they said, well, we need a lot of weeding to be done. Can you come out and weed our garden for us? And so we got to hoe the entire vineyard for them. And that was just something like little things that you can do to help. They just needed manpower. They just needed someone to get out there and do it because they couldn't actually get out there and do it themselves. Sometimes that's what ministry looks like, is just filling in a need that someone needs to get done, but they can't handle and do it themselves. So we also, this was not my team, but another team, they did a lot of labor and construction because they had men on their team. That's kind of how it works. And so they were building the school for blind boys in India. So the kids wanted to go to school, obviously, but in India you had to pay to go to school, and they couldn't afford it. And so the ministries wanted to build a school for these children that they could come to from all over the area. And so this team was working on building the school that month, and it was really hard work from what I hear. But again, it was filling a need that they could just fill in. And when they left at the end of the month, a new team came in and continued the work, kind of like what we do with our construction projects here. There's always a team coming in that can fill in the work and keep on going with what's been done. We also did a lot of teaching English, which was my favorite, because like I said, I taught English in Japan for several years. And so I was able to use those skills. It was a skill that I had that my teammates didn't, but I was able to help them and teach them as well. So we all grew together in this. And so in several countries, they want to learn English because it's becoming a global business language. If you don't speak English, you really can't go anywhere in the world. And that's included in their own countries. So in a lot of these places, we would just go to someone's house after school hours, and we would teach in their room, which is what they did here. They had set up these tables in the house. And then when the class was over, they would move the tables to the side and lay out their beds and go to sleep. They were that interested, they were that concerned about the people learning English and also learning about the Bible. Because after the English class, we would have a Bible study. And so it was a way of reaching the community through teaching and also through teaching of the Bible and learning about Jesus. So these are my kids in Laos. They were middle school, and they would come after school every day to learn with us. We also stayed at this dorm in Cambodia. And so this ministry, the woman in front, her name is Asui, and she and her husband are from India. They felt called to go to Cambodia and to teach these students about Jesus. And so in Cambodia, we live in the capital city of Phnom Penh. And the students want to go to college in the capital city because that's where all the colleges are. But they're all from very poor villages, and there's no dorms, like any kind of low-priced housing that they can live in the capital city. And so Asui and her husband bought these 2 huge houses with the money that they brought from India, and they set up a dormitory situation for these students. They have a place to live that they only pay a very small rent, and then they go to school during the day, and at night there's English classes that the volunteers like us would teach. And we also have Bible studies at night, and we have worship at night. And so these kids have a place to come where it's safe for them to be in the capital city. They can go to school, and they can also learn about Jesus. So it was really a win-win situation for everything, and we loved working with these kids. This also brought about one of my favorite moments, was when they asked me, so I had a really high-level English class, and they were pretty good. They really, were fluent in English. And so I said, what do you want to learn today, students? And they said, American history, teacher. We want to learn American history. I was like, all right, let's go. Let's learn about American history. So fortunately, I remembered everything I ever learned in American history class in high school. And we had a whole class on American history, and I was really proud of that moment. So this is in Vietnam. We also learned about idioms, which is something that you don't even think about in English, but really, do these things make sense? Cool as a cucumber, sick as a dog, take a cat nap. If you really think about those things, they do not make sense. And so when I taught this lesson, the students also got pens and papers that they hadn't brought out the entire lesson so far, and they were really interested in idioms because they hear these things and have no idea what they mean. So when you have a native English speaker in the classroom, they learn so much more than if you have someone who's just from the country and is also learning English as a second language. Okay, so let's keep going. Working with children was also something that we did a lot, and I absolutely loved these kids. Everywhere we went, they're just so happy and energetic and ready to play. Everywhere. Kids are the same all over the world. That's one thing that I've learned. And so these kids in Thailand, we worked in this capital city, we worked in a very large city called Pattaya, which is on the coastline of Thailand. And the city is known for its sex tourism. It's the #1 destination for sex tourism in the world. So every year, thousands and thousands of people go through the city looking for sex. They go to the bar districts, they go to the brothels and the red light districts, and it's really sad. But it's also a very poor city outside of those areas, and so these kids live in huts that are made of almost nothing. And every day they stay at home because their parents have to go to work. So these kids are in danger of being kidnapped. That's a reality in their lives. If they stay at home, then they might not be there when their parents get back, but their parents have to go to work because they have to support them. So it's a dangerous situation for them to be in. But this missionary couple, who's not pictured in this picture actually, they moved here and they started this thing called Blessing Home. It's a daycare for free for all the kids in the surrounding area. It's a way for the kids to come to a place that's safe, someone is watching them. They also get to learn English, they get to learn songs and play with each other in a safe place. They get food, which is something they don't get at home. And at the end of the day, the parents will come and pick them up and take them home. It's just a safe place for them to be. It's an area that was being created for them that they wouldn't have if this missionary couple didn't believe in doing something for these people. And I loved working with them. They were just adorable all the time. So next. As you can see, after nap time, they're really excited. And this is also proof that photobombing happens everywhere in the world. This is another daycare that we worked at in Laos. And I'll get to this one a little bit later, but also some of the kids that I love. And in the Philippines, we went out to the slum districts, again, where the kids live in huts made of nothing. And we would gather up all the kids and we'd take them to this parking lot behind a gas station. And every day we would teach them Bible songs and coloring pages and teach them Bible stories and do skits. And they just play with them for a couple of hours. And they were always really excited to see us and just climbed all over us like we were jungle gyms, which was really fun. We also got to pray for a lot of different people. So here in the States, if you think about going up to someone and saying, hey, can I pray for you? Do we do that? No, because our first reaction is someone's going to say, no, I don't want you to pray for me. Like, who are you? Our first thought is we're going to be rejected. That's the only thing we can think of. I thought the same thing going overseas. When we got to India, our contact said, all right, you're going to be going out and praying for people this month. Everywhere you go, you're going to get on the street and just start praying for people. And I was like, whoa, 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 that's not going to work. We're not going to be able to pray for anyone because no one is going to listen to us. I was really wrong, actually. We would go to people who had never met a foreigner before in their lives, and we'd say, can we pray for you? They'd say, yes, please. please pray for me. We go door to door and knock on houses, and they would open the doors and say, like, yes. Like, can we pray for you? Yes, please. And then come in and eat with us. Come in and share a snack with us. Come in and let's talk. Things like that would never happen in the States. Or maybe it would. We haven't tried. But that was one thing that I got to learn a lot, was the power of prayer and how open people are to receiving it if you just ask. So the red light districts, I mentioned something about this before with the kids in Thailand. We went to the red light districts in Thailand and the Philippines as well, and we'd go at night, obviously when the girls were working, and we walked down the streets, and we would talk to the women, we'd pray for the men, we would just pray for everyone we saw, we'd go into some of the bars and get to know the women as well. It was a really, really hard place to be. I had studied a little bit about the sex tourism industry when I was in college. I did it for a project, and I just, had all this like images in my head of what it was going to look like. I had all the knowledge behind it, but it was nothing compared to actually seeing it. To seeing the girls standing on a stage wearing almost nothing, and the men pointing and saying, I want that one. It was really difficult, especially because we walked down the street, this particular street actually, and you see signs saying like, have a girl for $12. And like people handing out menus, like this is what you can order, and it's like a girl, you can order this of a girl. And so a girl was $12 for an hour, and we're walking down the street and we see a stall for lobsters for sale, and the lobsters are $48. How can a lobster be more than a girl? It just broke my heart. I cannot believe it. Like what kind of world is this that we live in that can happen? And I was really upset. I was so angry. And I looked at all the men. I was like, how are you here? Why are you here? Don't you have women that you love, like mothers, sisters, daughters? Don't you have people that you love? Why could you do this? How could you do this to any girl? And I was just really angry. And I asked God, like, why are they here? What can they be doing? And in that moment, he said, I love them too. I love the women. They're broken. But I also love the men, and they are also broken. Something has happened in their lives that they can be here, and this can be okay for them. And so after that, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start praying for the men. I don't know why, I'm just going to start praying for the men. And I don't even know how it happened, but I was like, God, I'm praying for that one. God sent angels after that one. God, go talk to that one. And God was like, you go talk to that one. You go after him. I was like, okay. I don't really know how I feel about that, but God said to do it, I'm going to go talk to him. And that's when I met David. David is 72 years old. He's from London. He's been going to Walking Street for 30 years. And he just opened up to me. He didn't even know why he opened up to me, but he told me that he's been looking for love. He wants to find love. He grew up in a house where he was one of 8 children. His mother was busy all the time working and taking care of the kids. His dad was off in the war. So he was always by himself. He just never felt loved. And that's why he came to Walking Street looking for it. And I was like, well, have you ever asked Jesus? Have you ever talked to Jesus? Jesus loves you even now. He loves you despite what you're doing. He loves you because of who you are. And he said, no, I've never really talked to Jesus. And so we prayed. And I don't know if David accepted Jesus. I don't know if he came to know Jesus, but I still pray for him. And I hope that one day he will come to know one who really loves him. And he won't keep going to this place looking for love when it's just empty. So that was the story from Walking Street that still tears me up a little bit. And this is what it looks like walking down the streets with all the red lights and the girls and the women. Let's keep going. We also did a lot of evangelism outreach, inviting people to church. In Mongolia, we lived with a church, and during the day we'd go out on buses and all over the city. We'd meet people and invite them back to the church for things at night. So we go back for English class or for open mic night, for game night, different things to just get people to come into the church and help the church grow. And one thing that we did was a flash mob. You can see here. So one of the girls on my team was a dance choreographer at home. She worked in her church with that. She really wanted to use those skills in the race. So we all learned this big dance to a song, and then we went out to the Capitol Square of the city, and we did a flash mob 2 times in one day. It was something I never imagined myself doing, and when she first suggested it, I was like, how can we use that? Like, we should be out doing ministry, not doing a flash mob. But actually that night, our numbers doubled for English class. Because so many people had seen us. We handed out cards like welcoming people to the church, and they wanted to come see what this was all about. They wanted to see what the crazy foreigners were doing after the flash mob. But it was just like a great way of using God-given talents to spread his word and to meet other people. We also did a lot of preaching and teaching and singing and everything in church context. And so We always had a translator with us. That was one of the great things about working with people who were already there, is that if we didn't speak the language, which usually we didn't, there was someone who did, who could translate for us. And so many times we get to a church saying like, we're just going for Sunday service, and they'd say, "Team, please give the sermon today." You're like, okay, we're ready. It's like we kind of did rock, paper, scissors to see who was going to go first that day. That happened a lot of times. You literally have no warning, and you're told, "By the way, you're teaching, go." And so we just had to learn to rely on the Holy Spirit and to rely on Jesus to know that this was going to be okay, and that if we were going to be speaking, nothing was going to come from us that was not from Him. It was a lot of flying by the seat of your pants and just knowing that God's going to take care of you. So we learned a lot of trust in that. So keep going. And like I said, I taught myself guitar and I learned how to play. And so one week in Nepal, we did a worship workshop where people came from miles and miles around to learn about worship from us. We didn't know this was happening. It was, again, a thing that they said, the day before, "By the way, you're going to be teaching a worship workshop this week." And so we set up guitar lessons, and we set up piano lessons, and we taught about part of worship that week. That was our focus. So I was able to use this gift that I had only just discovered to teach others. It was immediately like you receive the gift, and then you give it. That's the way that it works. And it was a blessing, actually. So let's keep going. So lessons from the race. What did I learn on the race? For one, be appreciative of the little things. You might think of little things like a car, a house, things like that. Those are things to be appreciative of. But you also should be thankful for your washing machine, for a dishwasher, a bed, a shower, even a hot shower. That's very rare. Toilet paper, a toilet, a clean place to live, and running water. And a lot of places that we lived, we did not have most of these things. So, as you can see in this picture, a washing machine looked like a bucket. A bucket is probably one of the most important things you can have in a household. Because you use it for washing your laundry, use it for taking a shower, use it for doing dishes, use it as a trash can, and you use it to carry every little thing that you might need to. A bucket can do so many different things. Every house had a bucket. We got to one country at one point, and they didn't have a bucket in the house, and I went and bought one, because I knew that I was going to need one that month. So for a washing machine, you put your clothes in a bucket, you run water in it and detergent, you kind of do your manual washing yourself, and then you let it sit for half an hour, you come back, you rinse it out again, and you hang it up on a line to dry. And you always want to use a clothespin because your clothes might fly away. I did lose a couple things that way, and then I learned to use clothespins after that. That's the way that most of the world washes their clothes. We don't have a washing machine for most of the months. This is a toilet, Exhibit A. It's called a squatty potty because you squat. It's literally a hole in the ground. Again, there's two buckets in this one you see, because one is the trash can. One is filled with water that you use to flush the toilet because there is no flusher. Toilet paper does not go down the toilet either. It goes in the trash can, so it smells. It's just the way that it is. The pipe's not big enough. The next picture, toilet Exhibit B. That is an outhouse. They do exist. They're very cold at night. There also might be something else in there. You just have to be careful when you go in. That's another thing that most people use. Go to the next picture. This is what a bed looked like for a lot of the time. Mats on the floor. And if you didn't have a mat on the floor, you had a sleeping pad that you carried in your backpack. And usually, if you had a mat on the floor, you still got your sleeping pad, so you had a little bit more cushion. We slept on the floor for most of the time. I think I had a bed 1 month, and it was the most amazing thing ever. I feel like I'd never slept in a bed before. Let's see, keep going. This was also a place that we worked. This is in the Philippines, and it's a little slum community. They live on top of a river. Their houses are made of aluminum sheets of wood, scraps of wood, foil, whatever they can find to build a house with is what they live on. They're also situated on bamboo sticks that come out of the water, because if the water rises, then it protects their house, hopefully from getting overwhelmed by a flood. However, if you look in that water, it's very dirty. That's because it's almost like a landfill. It's where people dump all of their trash. And so they live in this community. This is their daily life. There is no clean water in this village. Every day, a tap is turned on from the city for 1 hour. And they fill up buckets, they fill up buckets of water, and that's their water for the entire day. They use that for washing, for cleaning, for cooking. That's all that you get. And so you learn to take either very short showers or no showers at all. It's just the way of life. And also, you don't want to be living in that area either, because it's actually very dirty. There's no running water for the toilets. And so when you go to the toilet, you go and you hear it splash into the river underneath you. That's just the way of life for them. And so it was a very difficult couple of weeks for my team and I, but it was also a learning thing as well. We just learned so much about how privileged we are and how much we have to be thankful for and what we have. Let's keep going. I also learned a lot about hospitality. Like I said, when we would go door to door and pray for people, they would always invite us in for food, every time. If they didn't have food, they would send someone to get it. This is including the slum districts where the people had nothing. They literally had a wall, like against a shed kind of thing, and that was their house where they lived. And they had one light bulb hanging from the ceiling. They had nothing around them. And if we came in to pray for them, they would send a child to go buy snacks, something that they could offer us. I always thought that Southerners were known for their hospitality, and then I went overseas and saw the way that these countries worked, and I was just blown away by how much they wanted to give us despite having nothing in return. And it showed me that, we think we have everything, and we try to hoard it, but the more we hoard it, the less we have. It's better to give than to receive. Okay? So the trust fall. Who knows what a trust fall is? Any ideas? All right, so maybe if you went to like summer camp or youth camp or anything like that, you might have done something like this. A trust fall is where you're with a group of people, and you're usually the one standing up on the stool. They're all laid up behind you with their arms out like this, and you cross your arms and you fall backwards, and you trust them to catch you. That's a trust fall. So if I'm standing up on the stool, there's going to be someone laid up behind me, holding their arms, and they catch you. So I did a lot of those in youth group and things like that. And I never really thought about it until I went to Nepal, and I decided to do something crazy. I decided to jump off this bridge. Let's keep going. So this is the gorge beneath it with the river and everything, and this is, next please, this is me jumping off that bridge. So I did something called a canyon swing. I wanted to do it for my birthday, and everyone thought I was crazy, but a lot of good people did it too, so it was okay. Some people did bungee jump, some people did canyon swing. It was just like an adventure moment that we all wanted to try together. And so I was standing on this bridge, and I knew I wanted to jump. I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. It's going to be awesome. I'm a bit of an adventure seeker. And so I was standing there, and I saw other people go before me, and there's 7 seconds of free fall when you jump before the rope catches you and you swing. And so you're standing there watching people going, and you're like, oh my gosh, like they just jumped, they're still falling, oh my gosh, the rope is broken, they have to be flying into the river now because the rope has not caught them yet. And then the rope would catch them, and they would swing out, and you hear them go, yeah! And you're like, okay. Whew, all right, so I can do this. I'm going to be safe. And then it's your turn to jump. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's a long way down. That's a really long way down. And you think, maybe I can't do this after all. But you're still ready to jump. You're already hooked up, and they're pushing you off the ledge. It's time to go. And so you're standing there, and you're like, this rope is going to break. It is not going to hold me. I'm going to fall right into the river, and I'm going to die. Obviously, I'm still here. I survived. I'm still alive. The rope held. But I learned a lot in that moment about my relationship with God, because I saw other people jump, just like you see other people trust God. You see other people trust when He tells them to jump, and they fall, they seem like they're falling, but then God catches them, and everything works out. And so I thought in the same way that, watching other people trust God, it always worked for them, but it was never going to work for me. If God told me to jump, I was going to jump, and that rope would break, and He would not catch me. That was just the idea that I had. I didn't trust Him enough to actually do what He told me to do. And so I learned that, you may be scary, you may think the rope is broken, but God is always going to catch you. And that was a big turning point in my relationship with God on the race and everything that I've done since then. Let's go to the next one. And that came into play later on in the race when we had a route change. Remember I said that earlier, no route subject to change? Well, in month 6, we were told by our squad leaders that we were not going to Japan. Remember the whole reason why I went on the race? Because they had a first ever all-Asia route going to Japan. Month 6, we were told, sorry, the one contact that the race has in Japan cannot take a team this year, so we can't go. I was like, excuse me, why am I here? Why did I do this whole thing? Why have I been going through this for 6 months to be told now that we're not going to Japan? I was really angry with God. It was really a lot of not why are we not going, it was why am I not going? Why are we not going to Japan? Because you promised that to me. That's what I thought. I thought God had promised that to me. He said, no, I didn't promise you Japan. I promised you trust. I promised you time with me. I promised you growth with me. This is part of that growth. And so it was really difficult for me. I was really angry with God for a long time. And I had to fight through that. I had to fight to trust that being obedient to Him was more important than getting what I wanted. Because His goals were greater than mine, and His goals were going to lead me closer to Him, and also to a greater relationship with Him, and learning to trust in what His plans are more than my plans. And that was difficult. But I also learned that when God takes something away, He will replace it with more of Himself. That was important. So God can also use you anywhere, anytime. I was in South Korea, just traveling, doing some touristy things, and I met this man and his son. They spoke English on the bus, and we were kind of going in the same direction, so I just struck up conversation with them. And they had never heard about Jesus, and somehow or another, I did not intend it to happen this way. We started talking about Christianity. We started talking about, what do you go to church? Do you know who Jesus is? And we were able to pray together. Something that I just did not expect at all. I was on a day off, so we had days off from ministry where we didn't have to work or anything. And I was like, it's my day off, I don't have to do this. Cool. But then it happened anyways, and it was just letting God take that time rather than what I had planned, letting him do what he wanted to do instead, and hopefully lead someone to Christ. So it's again a man and a son that I pray for all the time as I think about them. It's also important to stop and give time. So we were in Vietnam, and these kids approached us as we were walking along the shore, and they wanted to sell us seashells next to the ocean. I don't know, maybe they need to work on their sales pitch. So they wanted to sell us seashells. We said, no, we're not going to buy your seashells, but let's hang out. Let's spend some time together. Let's play together. So we spent a day playing with them. We spent the whole afternoon hanging out and playing in the sand and building sandcastles and waving these trees around and everything like that. And we bought them food and just hung out the entire afternoon. We didn't speak any Vietnamese, they didn't speak any English, but we played together. And it was just important to us because we stopped what we were doing. We had other plans for the day, and we just gave them up to play with these kids. And that was one of my favorite afternoons of the entire race, to spend time with these kids. It's also important to stop and give time when you meet someone you don't know what you can do for them. You don't know what's going to happen. So we had this 1 month, like I said, where we stayed in a hostel and we slept in beds, and it was amazing. And this is the hostel owner on the far side over here, Mimi, and her helper, Tal. So they also do the laundry in the hostel, which was really nice. We didn't have to do our laundry for the month. But Tal did all the laundry for the entire hostel, and that was a lot of laundry. And our door was right outside of the laundry area, and so I'd walk out and I'd see her standing there doing loads and loads and loads of laundry. And she was always rubbing her wrist, she would stop and pause and rub her wrist. And I just asked her one day, is your wrist hurting? And she didn't really speak a lot of English, but she was like, hurts. And so from then on, I stopped and did laundry with her. Every day before going out, and when I came back, I'd say, can I help you? What can I do? Can I fold? Can I wash? Can I do something to help you with this? And throughout that month, I got to spend a lot of time with Tal and build a relationship with her. And she was just an amazing woman. She was so full of life, and I loved spending that time with her. And we talked about Jesus, we talked about Buddhism, which is what she believed in, and we just talked about a lot of different things and spent time together that month. And it was important, I learned, to just give up your own schedule and see what God has for you, because it's always going to be better than yours. I loved that relationship that I built with her that month, and it was very important to me. But if I hadn't stopped and just given her that time, it never would have happened. I actually just told you this story. So God can change your heart. You just have to let him. Like I told you about the men in Walking Street, I was so upset. I was really angry. I was like, there's no way that anyone can love these people. But God changed my heart. He gave me compassion for the men in the brothels and in Walking Street. And it was something that I had to let him do. I couldn't do it myself. I was so full of anger and so full of hate that I couldn't let go of it. But God just changed it, just like that. I don't know how. That's the way that God works. You just have to let him. It's hard, but you have to let him and it will work out. You also have to pay attention because God has something for you. So there was 1 week on the race where our parents could come out and join us in the field and kind of see what we were doing and work with us. And that week happened to be in the Philippines. We went to work in the Walking Street, the brothel districts in the Philippines. And so that's when I met Lainey, who is here in the striped pants. She's a bar girl. She worked in one of the bars that I went to. And the ministry that we were with that month worked in the bar districts. It's called White Beverage here. And they go out in the bar districts, they meet the women, and they provide safe places for them to come to leave the bar districts if they want to. They provide housing, they provide food, they provide education. They send the girls to college because in the Philippines, if you don't have a college degree, you can't even work at McDonald's. You need such a high level of education to work even the lowest jobs, that the only jobs available to these girls are working in the bar districts. And so we went out every night and we would go to the girls and say, hey, if you want a place to live, if you want a place to come that's safe, come with us. We'll take care of you. We have a place for you to come that you can get away from this. You can bring your children. Please come with us. You can leave this place. And so I met Lainey, who was, again, the girl in the striped pants. We met her one night. We were just talking to her. And we asked all the basic questions like, what's your name? How old are you? And she said, well, I just turned 28 today. I was like, today's your birthday? Do you have any plans? She's like, well, I'm working, actually. And I was like, well, is the bar going to do anything for you? And they said, no, she didn't tell us ahead of time, so we can't do anything for her. And that was it. That was their response. And I was like, okay, well, that's sad, but we'll just keep talking here. So we talked a little bit longer, got to know her a little bit more, and then we asked, why are you working here? It's not a question you ask first, you ask that a little bit later. And she said, I have 2 kids, I'm trying to support them, I'm trying to take care of them, and there were no other jobs. I've only been working here for 2 weeks. Okay, well, can your family help you? Is there someone else who can help you, support you? She said, I can't tell my family because my father is a pastor, and I just can't tell them. And she was crying a little bit at that time, and we just didn't know what to do for her. And I was like, you know what? That is it. I'm going to do something for Lainey. I cannot sit here anymore. And so I grabbed a friend, and we went out and found a bakery, and we bought a cake, and we got like Happy Birthday Lainey written all over it. And we were walking back to the bar. We had one candle that we were going to light when we got outside the door. And we got to the bar, and our entire group of like 30 people, for some reason, was standing outside the door. They'd all like come up from different bars or going different directions, and somehow congregated in front of our bar. And I was like, hey guys, let's go in. Let's all sing Happy Birthday to Lainey. Let's just go in one big group and sing Happy Birthday. So we did. 35 people walked into this bar with a birthday cake, singing Happy Birthday to a bar girl, singing Happy Birthday to Lainey. And the bar just didn't know what to do. The girls on the stage were just like, what just happened? The men were amazed. They had no idea why anyone would do this for a girl. Lainey herself was just, she was incredulous. She had no idea. No one had ever done anything like this before. She had never had a birthday cake. This was the first birthday cake of her life. And it's just to show that, pay attention to what God has for you. Even the little things, even a birthday cake can change someone's life. Lainey came back with us the next day. She came back to the houses. Just like that's amazing. Also, listen and obey God when He speaks, because you never know what's going to happen. So I was riding a bus in Mongolia, just like kind of thinking, who should I talk to? Who should I invite back to the church tonight? And I sat next to this woman, Badma, and I was like, well, maybe I should talk to her. I don't think she speaks English, but I'll just try and see. God said, talk to her. And I was like, okay, hi, what's your name? And that's how I met Badma. And it was kind of a situation where you think you're always going to be giving on a mission trip, but you need to learn to receive as well. And so Badma invited me and some friends to her house. She had dinner for us. And she told us her story about how the doctors had told her she would never have kids. And you see 2 little boys in this picture. Those are her children. And she said, next time praying for 2 little girls. She just believed that, if God wanted it to happen, it would. And I learned a lot from her in that moment. I also learned a lot from this next couple, Sherry and Troy. They're missionaries from Chicago. I was sitting in a cafe one day, and they walked in, and I immediately heard God say, go talk to them. It's like, no! You'd think I would have learned my lesson by now, right? Like if God says, go do it, go do it. But I was like, no, I'm not going to go talk to them. I don't know who they are. Why would I do that? And so I sat there, they had like a lunch, they had met someone, they talked for a while, and like I was feeling the whole time like, go talk to them, go talk to them. Like, no, I'm not going to go talk to them. They got up to leave, and I was like, fine, I'm going to go talk to them. And that's how I met them. And they run this ministry in Mongolia called Flourishing Futures, where they live in the poor district, and they work with the kids there. Again, they provide English lessons, they provide computer skills, they provide daycare, they teach. It's kind of like a family situation that they work with the families. They believe that you have to reach the whole family, not just the children. And their ministry is amazing in the way that they work with these families to provide food, to provide education, and to bring their lives just a little bit higher in a standard of living. But also to have Bible classes and teach them about Jesus. They believe that's important. And it's just funny because Sherry actually, they were very wealthy in Chicago. They had a huge house, they had several cars, they had a really nice business. They had a really good life. And Sherry's mother saw something on TV one day about the street children in Mongolia. She started praying, like, God, send someone to Mongolia. Send someone to take care of these kids. A couple months later, Sherry feels like she should go to Mongolia. She's never talked to her mom. Her mom has never mentioned this. God sent her daughter to Mongolia. So it's kind of a lesson to be careful what you pray for, because you never know how God is going to answer that prayer. But Sherry and her husband have been there for 8 years now, and they're doing an amazing job. So sharing about Jesus can be dangerous. Just take the risk. So we had to, in China, our contact, we went out with him every night. We would leave little gospel messages on the doors of the houses. In China, it's illegal to talk about Jesus. You can't tell anyone if on the street. You can't just go up to people and pray for them. You can't go door to door. It's not okay. So we would leave little gospel messages on the doorsteps at night. We'd go out at like midnight, and we'd go out and lay them on the doorsteps. It was actually really dangerous. The team before us had been caught and deported. But in that time, they had actually led one of their prosecutors to Christ because he was reading the little gospel message and said, why would you believe in this enough to be out here doing this and risk getting caught? And they were able to tell them about Jesus in that time. So we went out every night, and we never got caught. It was kind of close one night, and we had to push a van up the mountain to get out of the village in time before the police caught us. But it was kind of the thing where if God tells you to do it, he'll protect you, and he'll keep you safe in doing that. So, one more thing about that last slide. In Laos, we had a preschool that we worked at where the director was from Korea, and in Laos, you're also not allowed to tell people about Jesus. It's not okay. You can't spread Christianity at all. And the director set up this preschool where they taught Bible studies, they taught English classes, and they taught like everything that kids need to know in a preschool. It was the best preschool in the entire country, and everyone knew it. So all the government officials sent their kids there, despite it being a Christian school, because they knew that they were going to get the best education they could. God protected that school. It's been open for 10 years, and they're still going. And all the government officials know that it's a Christian school, and they will still send their kids there because God is protecting it. So I also learned that rest is important. I got really sick in China, and then I put my pack down one day. I remember it's 38 pounds. I put my pack down. I felt something pull in my back, and all of a sudden I couldn't walk for 2 days. That's never happened to me before. I've never been sick like that, and I don't know how it happened or what happened, but I learned that rest is important. I had been pushing myself too hard, but it's important to remember that God created the world. He did all this amazing stuff, and then He rested. It's important for us to rest as well. We were made to work, but we were also made to rest. You can't always push yourself so hard. I also learned that humility is important. I was in a wheelchair for an entire day. We were in 4 different airports that day. Every time I had to be pushed in a wheelchair. I couldn't carry my own pack. I had to rely on others. And that was difficult. It was kind of hit to my pride. And I learned that, maybe my pride was a little bit too big. I needed to rely on others. We're built as a body of Christ. We should help each other and learn to be helped in return. It's important to actually receive that help and receive humility. I also learned that God heals. This is my squad mate, Chris. He broke his legs in a crazy accident. He broke both of his legs on the race, and he had to go through surgery, and he was sent home. But we also learned that God heals because a couple months later, he is walking. His legs are completely healed. He's ready to go to Spain, actually in January, for a missions trip. And it's just amazing to believe that, prayers can be answered, God can heal. We see it in the Bible, we think that just happened in the Bible. But if we actually pray now, God still heals. He is still in the healing business. God has gifts for you. Just look for them. So in Mongolia, we were teaching English, and Minjae walks in and says, I want to learn Japanese. Who does that? Who walks into an English class and says, I want to learn Japanese? Well, guess who speaks Japanese? So I had Japanese classes with Minjae that month. That was just amazing. God gave me this gift of this girl that we could talk in Japanese together. Megan, I met her in China. She does archery, taekwondo, and speaks Japanese. I do archery, taekwondo, and speak Japanese. I basically met my Chinese counterpart in China, and we became quick friends really fast. This is Tuksu. He became my Mongolian grandfather. So 2 months into the race, my grandfather passed away, and I was not able to come home for the funeral. But 9 months later, I met Tuksu, and he just became my grandfather. He was in no way like my grandfather, but we connected. He didn't speak any English, I didn't speak any Mongolian, but whenever our team needed something, they'd send me to Tuksu to go ask him for something. And I don't know how it worked out, but it did. We just connected so fast, and we took care of each other. He became really important to me in that month. And this is my Korean host family. That month when my back went out and I couldn't walk, they were my host family that month, and they took care of me. They literally became my family in a very short amount of time. And when they saw that I couldn't really get up and down, because you sleep on the floor. Again, that's very traditional, you sleep on the floor. And they made me a bed on the floor, and I couldn't get down to it. I was having a really hard time getting down and up off the floor. And so they said, you know what, we're going to give you our bed, because we have an actual bed, and we're going to let you sleep in our bed this month, and we will sleep on the floor. Just amazing little gifts like that. This family really took care of me in a time that I was hurting physically and also emotionally, and that was an amazing gift from God. And finally, Japan. We did actually end up going to Japan for our final debrief. It's a week at the end of the race where you just kind of relax, you have your last couple of days together, last couple of teachings, and usually it happens in the last country that you're in. But our logistics people worked it out that we were able to go to Japan for 5 days at the end of our race. And we touched down and I was like, I'm home. Oh my gosh, I'm home. It felt like the best place to be at that time. And that was like, God had said, you've worked so hard for so long. This is a little gift for you. This is time for you to spend in Japan, the place that you love and the people that you love. And it was an amazing way to end the race. And I loved it. I loved being there. And God said, now's not time for you to stay here, but you will come back. That was one thing that I did here. And so I'm excited to go back to Japan someday. So you also get to see beautiful waterfalls like this one, just amazing things that you see all over the place. And we got to ride elephants in Thailand, which is an incredible little thing to do. We saw these beautiful mountains in Nepal. We hiked this mountain and spent the night on the side of it, and we woke up to this view. Like, it's incredible. We saw the Great Wall of China, which is really, really, really long. Really, really long. So just amazing things like that you get to see, that God has little gifts for you along the way. Just notice them and appreciate them. So I learned that missions is loving the person in front of you. It doesn't matter where you are. I went across the world to do it. You can do it right here. If you're in line at the grocery store, talk to someone behind you. You never know what's going to come out of that conversation. And it's okay to wrestle with the hard questions because God is a great teacher. One thing I learned as a teacher is that I would teach a lesson and give my students work. And they would say, "Teacher, what's the answer to this question?" It's like, no, I'm not going to answer that for you. You just learned. You have your notes. You have the tools to answer this question. Work on it and figure it out yourself. If I give you the answer, it means nothing to you. And I learned that in the same way that God gives us the tools. He gives us the Bible. He gives us other people. He gives us the tools to answer these questions. And you're not going to learn if He just gives you the answer. So wrestle with it. It's okay. You learn a lot more, and actually you become stronger in the whole process. So those are some of the lessons that I learned on the race. I'm afraid that we are out of time, but thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions. I'll be around afterwards if you'd like to ask anything. Thank you.
We are running a little bit late, so we're going to go ahead and close. But Ashley, you want to share what your plans are now? I may be interested in that.
Yes. Okay, so one thing I heard from God the entire race was foundation is important. I felt like I kind of got thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool this past year and did the doggy paddle. And so I'm going to seminary starting in actually 2 weeks. I fly to California and I'm going to Fuller Seminary. And my plan is not necessarily to get a degree. My plan is just to learn. I'm going until money runs out because I don't want to go into debt for this. As a missionary, you're already fundraising. You don't need to be fundraising for debt as well. And so I'm going until money runs out. I'm going as long as God wants me to be there. And then I'm going overseas somewhere. I don't know where. Probably Japan.
Mark, would you mind closing us in prayer?
Yeah, for sure. Let's pray. Heavenly God, Lord and Savior, you move in so many wonderful, amazing ways. We thank you for this time that you brought Ashley to us to share who you are, your love. Remind us how amazing and powerful and caring, compassionate, forgiving that you are, God. We thank you for these reminders. We thank you for putting us together today to fellowship with each other and ask ourselves strong questions about our relationship with you. Are we doing what you've asked? Are we moving towards you? Are we loving those in front of us? God, go with us today and allow us to touch, hold, speak to, love someone near us, behind us, in front of us. Share your word, share your love. And we pray that we glorify you in everything we do. It's in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, everyone.